In this episode, Brent Poppen talks about finding hope in the darkest moments and how to bring hope to others. Brent is widely known for his motivational speaking, his writings, advocating for the adaptive, his role in the Academy Award-nominated film Murderball, and winning in the Paralympics. Brent also works in a bunch of other significant realms, including rehabilitation counseling at a children's hospital. Brent and I talk pushing hope.
5.5 years ago, I was shot multiple times and I was diagnosed with a spinal cord injury. Well, at that moment, I didn't know how drastic my life was about to change. And it didn't change for the worse, but it changed for the better.
I was talking with my palliative care doctor today, and she turned around to me and she looked at me and she was like, do you think that if you keep on doing all these things that you'll eventually beat this? And I was sort of like, actually, yeah, that's probably what I'm trying to do.
Well, I know what my body's going to do to me. I've got a wheelchair in my future. But you know what I've been looking for?
What's that?
One with off-road wheels.
No, nothing will ever take away the pain of my daughter not being here. My reality.
If you could go back to that day, February 18, 1990, and change what happened, my honest answer is I wouldn't change it because if I didn't get hurt that day, I wouldn't be in front of that school. I wouldn't be in front of the schools in the upcoming weeks, or I wouldn't be talking with you. This is just my journey, and it's given me an opportunity to have a profound impact on a lot of people and inspire and change lives.
You can expect life to kick you in the teeth, but you always get back up no matter what, and you just keep going.
Living Adaptive with Scott Davidson, a podcast about learning to live adaptively.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back and welcome to new listeners. While you're listening to this episode, go pour a glass or two of Peachy Canyon wine. If you don't have Peachy Canyon wine on hand or you want to learn more, then go to peachycanyon.com. You can find this link in the show notes. There you can place an order or learn more about this winery. Peachy Canyon is one of the top ranked wineries in the world. And for us on the podcast, Peachy Canyon Winery made the effort to support our guest today, Brent Poppen. All right, so let's get this rolling. What's up, Brent? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. Hello to the podcast world out there. I appreciate you putting me back on and sharing the story and sharing the journey.
Well, you have so much more to your story. You've added so much. You're campaigning a ton. You've got a bunch of movements going, but you've got this 2018 Pushing Hope campaign underway. You've had some experiences happen since the last time we talked. It's pretty intense what's happened in the last year. We'll dig into that a little bit. But to start, I want to get into your 2018 Pushing Hope campaign. What is that all about?
Yeah, for me, having gone through the spinal cord injury at 16 and feeling that despair when I was laying in that hospital bed as a quadriplegic, not being able to move very much, I just remember how terrible I felt and how I thought there was a lack of hope for my future. And I just remember thinking in that bed that I needed to do something in this world for other, not just kids, but other people going through difficult times, whether it was spinal cord injuries like I happen to have, or, brain injury or an amputation or whatever that significant time happened, whatever happened in that moment that took that hope away from somebody and they were living in that dark time. I wanted to be that light for them. And I knew it was going to be a process, something I had to work hard towards and find the hope myself and understand it and earn it. And then, share it with as many people as I can. And I think that's where we were at. And as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, that incident in Vegas was a turning point in my life for sure.
Yeah, so you're speaking about the incident in Vegas. That's the large-scale tragedy that happened, a Route 91 tragedy. I'm about 10 to 15 minutes from there, and we were there. We weren't at the show, but yeah, it was a pretty scary experience. Now, on your end, you were actually at the Route 91 concert when it went down. I don't think those that follow you would know this, but those listening wouldn't know. You not only have you gone through a bunch of things prior, but then this lands on your lap since we've talked. You thankfully survived. You're here now. You posted a video recently. I shared it on our Facebook page, but most of our followers are on other social media apps. I'll be putting it on our site, and I'll try to link it in the show notes. Sometimes we have trouble with YouTube videos, but I'll definitely get it on our site, and they can see you rewalk the path. How did you survive that event, man?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to surviving that, right? There's the physical side of staying out of the path of a random bullet from a maniac that's not, pointed at anyone in particular, that's just looking to do as much mass carnage as he could. And then the psychological side, the emotional side of getting through that moment of seeing what we seen, hearing what we heard, and dealing with it ourselves. And what it really hit home with me was, and as if I needed another life lesson to show me, was we're not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised the next hour when I leave Children's Hospital and drive 2.5 hours home that I'm going to make it home. And it's terrible that you think that way, that you have to think that way, but going through an event like that reinforces that particular train of thought, because that night, listening to Jason Aldean start the concert at 10 o'clock, we assumed it was going to be, we had been to every Route 91 since it started. There's a lot of, my wife and I both love all kinds of music, but especially country music. And we've gone to other country concerts, festivals, and they're just not wheelchair friendly, especially like the ones out in Palm Springs and out on grass, and there's not shade, and it's not fun for someone in a wheelchair. And so I had told my wife, 4 years ago, that I'm going to find us a festival on cement somewhere in the world, and wherever we find it, that's going to be our vacation. And it just so happened that was the first year that Route 91 popped up on my search list. I pulled my car over, got tickets right away, and we've had an amazing time going there every year. And then last year, as everyone knows, is when that mass shooting happened and caused all that damage. And we have dealt with it, well, and had a lot of support with each other and a lot of support from outside help, which has made a big difference. And then, like you said, just recently, we both felt it was important for us to go back and rewalk our path. And I made a short little video of it, and it was a big emotional healing for us.
Yeah, that memorial wall you have in your video, you can actually see some of the writings, and you can see kids writing to their parent that deceased there, how much they miss them and love them. And it's really intense, because here on the ground, it was really intense too. Going around the school, wondering who passed, who didn't, who got injured, hearing about the stories. It was really an intense period of time. But in that video, you get to capture that memorial wall. And I thought that was really cool that you were able to share that experience of going back and having some sort of healing, because if anything can come out of that, I think unity is great and so much more. But in that video, you share that. That's pretty intense though.
Yeah. And Vegas did an amazing job of wrapping their arms around a terrible event and giving the support that was needed. I don't live in Nevada. I live in California. But for the people that I know that live in Nevada that went through it with us, and being from an outside perspective and being there and seeing that memorial, the healing garden that they put in, for anybody, even if you didn't go through the event, it is worth a trip out there and just to walk along that path and feel the love and compassion that Vegas has given to that event has been really beautiful for us to see.
It's a super transient town here. And the first time I felt really a community was when everybody did wrap their arms around this event and everybody did come out, because it is a very transient population. Everybody's from everywhere else. It's rare to meet an actual local, but they did come around that. It was pretty cool. But I looked down, and the night it happened, I wake up, and to alerts, and eventually I see you're there. You're freaking there. That was fucking crazy. Sorry with the language, but that really is. It was really freaking crazy. And then I did follow your story afterwards. I did notice that eventually you did get picked up by the news, and I think a few outlets picked you up, where you discussed, what you saw, witnessed, how you got out. It was crazy. It was crazy. Just knowing that, you went through that was intense, because you already have this huge heart on you. But like you said, things like 2018, your Pushing Hope campaign is now underway, and out of tragedy came, a lot of empathy too.
Yeah, my autobiography is Tragedy on the Mountain, and through that autobiography, it talks about, if I could go back to the day I got hurt, would I change what happened? And the answer is no. We wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't have been speaking at all the different events. I wouldn't be at Children's Hospital. I wouldn't have been married to my wife. So, we've seen this tragedy also shape my life in a way where it just made me, if I was going 75 miles an hour to try to make the world a better place, it's now put me in the Tesla to try to go 105 miles an hour and try to make this world a better place with the time that I'm gifted to have on this earth. And I just don't want to waste a day not doing something positive, either for myself or doing something positive for someone in this world, and just making it a better place. And the campaign is going to be a hashtag, be that change, right? It only takes one person. If one person would show some kindness to another person, and that one person, that ripple effect goes out. And I think my life, I hope I do a good job on social media of showing, as one person who I am, that we can, as one person, have a huge impact on this world. And it just starts really by just one act of kindness, one act of support. You giving me this support this hour on the phone is that ripple effect that's going to allow us to reach thousands of people that I would have no way of reaching. And so that's the theme behind the campaign. Is it doesn't need to be 400 people getting together and having meetings and raising $6 million, which would be great. It could be one person showing kindness to one person, and at that moment, you may be having a profound effect on that person. And I sent you some information before this that I think shows that.
Yeah, so I'm going to post some of that, if that's okay, on our website. But you often, in fact, you've got a new book coming out. This is your third book. You have a children's book, you have Tragedy on the Mountain, and you have this new book coming out. And I think it's going to be a compilation of a lot of these notes. A lot of these notes talk about resiliency, hope, even dark stuff that comes out, prior to that. Can you explain a little bit more about this third book?
Yeah, it falls right along with that message of hope. When I'm speaking to an audience, when I'm writing a paper, whether the audience is elementary kids or a corporate or an organization, I want my audience to feel something. That's one thing I think we're lacking in this world. We don't feel, we don't have emotion. We don't feel the sadness we're supposed to feel. We don't feel the happiness at the level we're supposed to feel it. And so I feel like everything is kind of in a gray area, and I want people in my audience to tap into that emotion of sadness, that emotion of anger, because it's real. And if you just suppress it and don't feel it, it's not going to go away. But I also want them to feel that highest feeling of hope and happiness. And so with me speaking so much at schools, a principal a couple of years ago, I'd been on his campus 3 years in a row, and he's loved the message. And he came up to me at the end of the year and said, "Hey, this summer, Brent, I want you to go into this summer and really create a new program for schools, because we want to have you back on campus, but I have to go to my funding people. And if I just keep saying, Mr. Poppen, they're going to cut me off at a certain level. But if I'm able to say, no, he has a different message, he has a different presentation, then we're able to keep you back on campus." And that was kind of the fire that I needed that got lit. And I didn't know what I was getting into, honestly. My goal was just to create another emotional program where we could go in and have tears of sadness and tears of happiness and share some hugs and come out being inspired. And the idea was to create a different documentary, which we did, a different message, and use my books a little bit more, and then allow the students or the audience, we've done it with different audiences, to the last 20 minutes of the presentation to draw a piece of art that my life represents to them. And there was no rules. It just had to be on 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, so I could keep it nice. But the paper could be colored paper, lined paper. Your medium could be chalk, paint, markers, crayons, pens, pencils. I just wanted whatever you were feeling, whatever was in your head, I wanted to end up on paper. And I didn't know what I was getting into. And over that year, I received over 5,000 pieces of art. And the first one I received, I don't think I sent it to you, but the first one I received was a 4th grade girl. And she drew me in my wheelchair and my hoodie and my hat, which is what I always speak in.
Yeah.
In my wheelchair, looking at a full-length mirror. I was standing in the same clothes that I was sitting in my wheelchair in, but I was standing in the full-length mirror looking at myself. And she wrote, Mr. Poppen today she wrote Mr. Poppen at age 16, pointing to me in my wheelchair. And then she made an arrow to the mirror that I was standing in, and she wrote Mr. Poppen someday.
That's cool.
And when that was the first piece of art I got from a 4th grade girl, I knew we had something very, very special. And now it's developed into, out of those 5,000 pieces, over a year and a half, I got it down to 49, and we're making a coffee table book, inspirational coffee table book, out of those 49 pieces of art and what they mean to me with a little context behind them.
Cool. And how are we going to obtain that though, man? Are we going to be able to buy that?
Yeah, you're going to be able to buy it. We're working on a few different things. I'm going to self-publish a few of them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm so blessed to have support. We're going to take it to some publishers and present it and see if somebody else feels what we feel, and all the different test groups that we have talked to with everybody in tears. If it's anything close to what I'm feeling, I'm going to create a presentation behind it, and hopefully we'll be able to push it out on a mass publication where they can get it through my website or get it on Amazon. So we have a little ways to go there. We have all the art picked out, the book's in order, the context is there. We're just tidying up some few loose ends with the beginning intro on the front page and the last page. And then we're gonna publish a few of these and go out and have some meetings in the art world and the book world and see if we could get some backing behind it. But it's a very special project to me.
Well, I have a lot of questions that pertain to hope specifically. I think that's kind of the theme of this interview in a lot of ways is hope, pushing hope and be that change. What is it? What does it take to grab that hope when you're down? I mean, I saw you working with a high school boy. It looks like he had some sort of potentially spinal cord injury. He was going through a lot. This was probably like 6 months ago, but you're showing up and helping him. And what did it take? It seemed like, his personality changed over time. He's starting to feel things are improving, and maybe, he's accepting where things are, but at the same time, it seemed like there was hope there. What does it take for somebody in a position where it's really tough to get that hope again?
I think, hope is a big word in my life. When we were creating this art book and I was sitting with the people that believe in it, with the very initial stages a year and a half ago, we were all sitting around this room, and the question comes to me is, this is your project. What do you want someone who's looking through this book? What do you want them to get out of it? And the first thing that came to mind was, I want them to get hope. And for me, the way somebody gets through something difficult and finds that hope is having support, having somebody, it doesn't have to be 100 people, but having a support in your life that is there for you to share those feelings. And I think the one of the initial most important things is to allow yourself to feel. When I'm working with these kids at Children's Hospital and they have these traumatic brain injuries or spinal cord injuries, and their life is going to change, it's already changed in an instant, and it's going to continue to change. there's going to be some dark times before we get to that happiness. And it's allowing those people to feel and work through those dark times. It's okay to be angry. You know, you have a bullet in your back. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to feel sad. But what I'm here to let you know is in that darkness that you're feeling, I'll let you feel it, and I'll be there right with you. But you're also going to know there's a light at the end of that tunnel. And I'm that light. I've lived it. I've been in that dark place. I've been in a place worse than where you're at, and I've come out the other side. And as long as you need to be in that dark place, I'm going to be there right with you, but we're going to pull you to that hope. We're going to support you through this journey, and it's going to give you a story that's going to allow you to impact this world.
What's the first thing you do or have done when everything's fallen apart? Like you said, you've been there. Everything's falling apart. Everything's gone to shit. Everything's a mess. What's the very first thing you do maybe to start to change?
The very first thing I do is I don't run from my feelings. The very first thing, I acknowledge how I'm feeling and I let myself feel that, as opposed to just saying, I got to squash this anger. I got to squash this sadness. I got to suppress it. I got to push it away. And I just got to take that next positive step. My belief, what's worked for me, is allow myself to feel that anger. And if I need to yell or curse or whatever I need to do, go to the gym and lift it out, or whatever my mechanism is to deal with that. I'm so thankful that I have a group around me. I have friends. I have an amazing wife who understands that, and, you know, who was with me and went through the Vegas herself and has her own, you know, anger and all the things that she's worked through. She allows me to feel that. It's not a personal thing. If I'm going through something difficult, she's there to wrap her arms around me and help me through that. And I'm the same way with her. And it goes over to what I do with my kids here. A lot of my day is wrapping my arms around a kid who's in tears, wrapping my arms around a mom or a dad who's in tears, and letting them know that it's okay to feel, but we're going to work through this.
It's pretty amazing. That really is. When I think of what you're saying right now, who you are, who you've become over the years, because we got to watch you on Murder Ball. We got to watch documentaries. It's like we did get, in our day and age, we did get a chance to kind of trace your history and who you've become to a large extent, which is kind of cool, right? It's not like where it didn't get lost. It's there. But what is a template if somebody wants to start pushing hope? You know, what is some of the steps that it takes to start setting something up or start that in motion?
Yeah, and it's simple, and that's what, when I'm talking to the kids or my audience, is the one thing I try to get across to them is, you guys don't realize how much power you really have in your life. A lot of times the audience feels like, well, how am I going to make a change? Mr. Poppen, you get to travel around the world and you get to speak to, 30,000 kids a year and write books and do all this fun stuff. So we know the impact you're having. But as a junior in high school, as a senior in college, or someone in business, how do I change the world? And I get to tell them, just one act of kindness. When that person that's in your room, when you see someone having a downtime, a simple hello, a simple, hey, what can I do to make this day better? Hey, do you need a hug? Do you need a friend? Just the act of kindness is that first step of having an impact on somebody else's life. And it doesn't have to be buying them a home. It doesn't have to be giving them this great vacation. Your time is more powerful and more precious than anything money could buy.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And we walk through a little bit with what I'm going to be doing this year with the kids, and they don't know, the students don't know this yet, but when I go into an auditorium, and whether I'm talking to adults or I'm talking to kids, we're going to do the same thing. Is ahead of time, I'm going to find somebody and just have them be annoying while I start the presentation. And if I ask them to stop being annoying, I want them to keep being annoying and keep being annoying, and let me build up that anger and that frustration to make the whole room feel what I'm feeling, and then pull everybody off the ledge a little bit, let them in on this was something that we have talked about, but it becomes real that one person sitting in row 1, seat 2, that one person affected 800 people in a matter of a few minutes in a negative way. One person, 30 seconds, 800 people are affected in a negative way. That one person, by showing kindness, could have that same impact. We talk a lot about it when students go into a classroom. Oh, the teacher hates me. The principal hates me. It's the way they're approaching. They have that power to change how somebody perceives them. And when people start to realize how much power they have with their gift of time and kindness, it's a very powerful, powerful moment for the kids and the audiences when they get that.
Yeah, for sure. But when I hear that, I think you always have interesting stories of students that you've worked with. Like, for instance, the picture that was drawn of you at 16 and then you and Amir later on down the line. In recent times, I'm sure you've encountered something really traumatic, but yet at the same time dynamic, of somebody that's gone from trauma to something much improved. Do you have a story or a person that you can think of right now that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, I have a plethora of catalog of stories that I've seen, and the one that I'll talk about is the message that I sent you earlier, when I was just saying you, and what's important for when we're talking about hope and kindness, when you're showing the world that hope, when you're showing that world that positivity, that kindness, you may not always get to see the fruit of your labors. When you've helped a friend out that day who was having a bad day, you might not understand the darkness that they were feeling. So you might not get to see the end result of what your support, of what your love, of what your kindness has done. You just have to hopefully trust me, and I'm able to convey that through my stories, that your hope and your positivity does make a difference in the world. And the one that I shared with you was when I was speaking at an elementary school, and I was on campus for 3 days, and it was Friday. It was the last day. I was in my car getting ready to go home, had 3 super powerful days of programs and classroom visits and interactions with the kids, but again, not knowing necessarily what every kid is going through. As I was going through my emails at the end of the day, just whizzing through them as I'm in my car before I pull out of the parking lot, and I notice a name, and I thought it was a teacher from that school, and I thought, well, maybe I better click on that. Maybe I left something in her room. Maybe she wanted me to come talk to a student. And so I just clicked on that email, and it was from a 10-year-old girl who had, anyway, it was from a 10-year-old girl who had filled out everything correctly on my website to get to my contact. And that email from that student had talked about, we were just finishing a discussion. And when I'm speaking to an audience, like I told you, it's not just a pat on the back. We go through all the different emotions. We don't run from subjects, whether we're talking to second graders or college students. And we're talking about anger and depression and how I got through it. And that student shared in her email that she too feels like she's going through some very dark times and often thinks about taking her life, and asked if I could help her.
Wow, that's intense.
It's about as intense as it could get on in my life. And thankfully, I had a personal relationship with the principal, so I was able to contact the principal within minutes. He had no idea this student was feeling this way, and this is months into the school year. He was able to contact the parents. They had no idea that their child had this voice inside her that didn't feel was getting expressed, and had these dark issues that she was dealing with, and was able to get her, therapy within 24 hours. And now, on the positive side, is doing amazing in school, and was able to deal with those frustrations and those dark times once she was able, I think, to express them. And I felt just so blessed that my story gave her an ability and a comfort to see what I'd gone through, to share that with me, something that she had not shared with other people in her life. And so it's events like that that make you realize you don't always get to see those kids, but just know when you give positivity to the world, when you give kindness to the world, when you give hope to the world, you're making a difference. You might just not always get to see that end result.
Wow. Yeah.
And there's been people in my life, who have given me support and kindness and love. And they, weren't with me when I won the Olympic medals. They weren't with me when the books got published. They might not still be in contact with me knowing that I'm working at Children's Hospital, but they were a part of that journey of giving me that kindness, that support that I needed to allow me, to hopefully continue to search for my potential.
Well, you were telling that story. One thing I've noticed, at least in conversations and some listeners, and I have asked, they've gone through something bad. Seems like PTSD is really huge right now, especially with the military side of things. And they want to go towards that hope. They want to go towards pushing hope. They want to do that, but they're reliving those bad events. Do you ever deal with that subject?
Yeah. I mean, especially working at Children's Hospital, we see a lot of different injuries here with kids, and we've had our fair share recently of shootings where kids, for whatever reason, a variety of reasons, have gotten shot and paralyzed, and have to deal with that immediacy of that paralysis and how life changes, but then also over time work through what you're talking about, that PTSD, where it's real. And having gone through Vegas, it took a long time for me to be able to watch a movie, to listen to a loud noise, to watch a TV program and not turn it off if there was violence or the sound of a gun going off. And so understanding it a little bit from that level, which is nowhere near to what, our brave men and women that go through the military, but just having a little piece of it makes me understand that it stays with you for a long time.
Yeah, it seems like it can haunt them for years upon years, that whole event. And I totally understand the idea of like hearing a sound or something could bring it back up. But there's been, for whatever reason, the last couple months, there's been a ton of talk about that, just a ton of talk about it from listeners, and just wanting to get more discussions going about that and getting through that PTSD. It's a pretty tough run,
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would never want to do is put a timetable on it. Because, everybody is different. And so everybody deals with it in a different way. I think I was able to deal with the Vegas incident a little bit better, that might be the right word, easier than my wife, because of what I see at Children's Hospital. It's allowed me to compartmentalize different parts of my life, where if a child asks me, who's dying of cancer, to be in the room and hold their hand when they take their last breath, something obviously very emotional, very difficult, but going through those moments allows me to put it in some place in my mind and continue to live life, and then not forget about it, have to deal with it. But I think I was able to do that with Vegas. I was able to compartmentalize that terrible event, put it somewhere else for a while, allow me to work through it at my own time, where someone like my wife, who's just a big heart, works with second graders, wears her heart on her sleeve, it doesn't have that ability to just tuck it back somewhere. She relives it as she hears the sounds going on the, whether it's a backfire in a car. We live out in the country, out by a military base, so when they're doing their practicing and you're hearing the automatic fire, all those little things that a lot of people would never think about set off that moment again. And it's just time, love, patience, and support. Those are all things, and you can't put a time label like, hey, babe, I need you to get through this by March of 2019. That's it. Figure it out. You know what? today we're going to take a positive step. Tomorrow we're going to take a positive. We're going to continue doing as much as we can each day, and we'll work through it. But there doesn't have to be a timetable on it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just don't want people to feel like they're going through it by themselves. That's the part that worries me, whether I'm dealing with kids in my life, whether I'm talking to an audience and they come up and approach me and say they feel like they're alone in this world. That's, for me, the red flag that breaks my heart, that makes me want to do everything I can for them. It really bothers me and hurts me in my soul to know there's people feeling pain and depression and that they feel like they're going through it by themselves.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Those are the people I worry about the most.
Yeah, I get that same vibe. I feel like nowadays too, it's like in the last couple of years, it feels like there's been more callousness towards that type of thing, where a child feels alone or an adult feels alone, just fighting this alone. It sucks so bad. I can feel that too. It's a real bummer when you're seeing that. It's not fun to watch, and I can't imagine what it's like to be there, or I have been there, but like what it's like to be there for them right now is just going through an enormous hell. What? Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt you on the positive side. That's what I'll share with, I think, what we are so thankful to have in our life, Erica and I, and our group of friends that are there for us. Years ago, Erica's dad he's passed now from cancer, but I was in Argentina competing when he got diagnosed, and she didn't want to tell me because I was so far so far away. There was not a lot I could do on the phone that would be able to help her. But she let one of our friends know who lives 4.5 hours away, and that girl got in her car and drove to Erica, knowing that I wasn't there, so she wouldn't have to spend the first night alone in her house with that feeling of being alone, having her dad just being diagnosed. And so when someone's willing to do that, when you have that support, my wife didn't have to feel that for a minute. Somebody was there that night that took the time and showed that kindness and showed that support so that she wouldn't feel like she was alone in this world, at this house, dealing with those terrible emotions. And if I could help somebody not feel that way, I would do everything I can to be that friend that my wife had.
That's the hope, though, is when they're listening to you. One thing I hate about the time limits and not even time limits, but summing up, say, for instance, this podcast episode, it's tough to fit everything in there. Yeah. That should be said or needs to be said to those listening that are going through that, or to those that know somebody going through that. It really is. It's so tough to give guidelines and so forth. That's why I always point to, I feel like you're somebody that they can kind of tag on, and you always have really decent input. You always have a big heart. You're always producing new content, and that's important, because having that new content, something to grab onto, some sort of kernel of hope, is so essential. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and I actually wrote this question down today. I wanted to hear it. It's kind of a random question, but what is some bad advice you hear in your profession and your speaking while working with those going through tough things? Like, what is some of the bad advice you hear others give?
I'll share a personal story with you that'll highlight exactly what you're saying that happened yesterday. We had a kid here at Children's who had a traumatic brain injury. She was in elementary school and did pretty well in our rehab, well enough to, you probably, if she walked into your classroom, you wouldn't know that she had an incident that gave her this brain injury. And that's the scary part when we're dealing with depression, whether it comes in a variety of forms. You don't get to see it. You don't get to see what I'm feeling inside. You just see me from the outside. And I may look great on the outside, but you don't know the demons, the darkness, the depression that I have inside. And I wanted to go back to school with this girl and support her so that she would know somebody understands her and that she has a friend, she has support, she's not going through this by herself. and we would educate the class on how they get to be her support system. And if she is not doing a certain activity, it's because she's still healing, and she's going to heal for a significant amount of time, and they get to be a part of that. Well, it through a variety of people felt like they didn't need the support at school because she was doing so well and acclimating so well. And I said, yeah, but you have to allow her to feel, no, she's doing great. She's doing great. Then I talked to the family, and they're like, well, what we don't want to do is we don't want to acknowledge it because it's going to make her sad.
Oof.
And I said, no, that's why I'm here. You have to acknowledge it. You have to allow this girl to feel what she's going through so we could support her through that. Just pretending it didn't happen, suppressing it, it's going to manifest in different ways. And then she goes, well, we were at church on Sunday and somebody brought up the accident and she started bawling. And I said, that's good. That's what we want. We want that. And we want that to be, no, stop crying. Don't feel that way. We don't want that. We want to wrap our arms around and say, it's okay. You're here. It's okay to feel those emotions. Support her through it. And so the scary thing for me, but that highlights, I don't know if I did a great job expressing it.
You did.
But what scares me is when people don't want to deal with their feelings and they just want to suppress it. They just want to deny it. They just want to close their eyes and make it go away. And when you're dealing with serious issues in this world, emotional issues, physical issues, just pretending that it didn't happen, suppressing it for the moment doesn't make it better. Those feelings, those emotions, that darkness will find its way to the surface at a time that you may not know or understand. But if we deal with it initially and wrap our arms around it and give that support and love, that kindness, that hope, and allow them to feel those feelings and guide them through it, it makes for a much more positive recovery. And, that's what, and I think that's the formula for a lot of these things that we're dealing with in this world is acknowledging it, supporting it, and being there for each other. And like you said, I think we're losing a little bit of a grip on being there for each other.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you said it really well. You did. You said that really well. That's a great example of bad advice, especially in that situation. You're going to know because you've touched more cases than probably most. And so you're going to know better in those situations. That's really good input. Now let's get into the plugging. We're definitely plugging everything you have, but I want you to plug something that brought you hope. Maybe it was a website, a book, or something in this period of time that you've recently gone through with the Vegas tragedy, with dealing with cancer patients, dealing with trauma patients, dealing with so much stuff. What have you got hope out of?
The first thing that just jumps to my mind, I would plug, and I have nothing to do with this. I reap no benefits from this, is the Peachy Canyon Winery family. So if you could support, if you see Peachy Canyon wine in your grocery store and you're a wine person, buy it. If you want to give a gift to somebody that's the appropriate age and you're going to a TGIF, support it. If you're in a restaurant and you look at the wine list and you see Peachy Canyon from Paso Robles, support it. And why I say that is we've been with this family that, we live in Paso Robles, so he's part of the Paso Robles wine community. And he knew that I was in Vegas and reached out to me when he had an event that I wasn't invited to, but he knew there was going to be other Vegas survivors there. And I was on my car and he got my phone number and called me and said, Brent, this is Doug Beckett, the owner of Peachy Canyon Winery. It sounds like I'm asking you, but I'm going to tell you, I want you at my event tonight. Wherever you're at, I'll make it happen. And I want your wife there. There's other survivors from Route 91, and I want you guys just to meet each other. And so for him to not have anything to do with me being in Vegas, I don't see him on a daily basis, but just for him to reach out on his own time, he's a busy guy, and invite me and my wife to be guests at his event and put us in touch with other survivors that now we see and talk to on a weekly basis, was one of those things that has changed our lives and shown us what one person, he didn't have to pick up the phone. He didn't know where these relationships were going to lead, but he chose to make that effort. And they happened to be school teachers that he didn't know they were school teachers. My wife's a school teacher. They all could be sisters. And it's brought that circle of support into our life that we needed at that moment. And it was just because one person, Mr. Beckett from Peachy Canyon Winery, reached out on his own to support what people were going through. And so it's people like that in this world. It's honestly, it sounds like a plug for you, but it's somebody who says, you know what, your story is worth being heard, and we're going to share it with our podcast community. And if we affect one person, this hour was worth every second that we've taken to make it happen.
Yeah, nice job, Peachy Canyon, for sure.
And they're also, you're going to hear more about it. He's an art collector, and he was behind having this project, and there's a whole emotional story about the art book, and you'll hear more about it on when we get closer to the end of it. But for me, it's people that go out of their way to make a difference in this world that don't have to do what they do. You have hundreds of people, thousands of people probably you could choose to podcast, and today, thankfully, you chose to share my story, and it's that kind of support that's going to change the world. And if people are going through a dark time, like you told, I have a lot of social media. I will always respond to people. I look at every piece of art I get. I look at every letter I receive. I look at every email I get from people on social media. So if you want to share something with me, reach out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not hard to find. It'll be very obvious with Brent Poppen, and find me, and I will respond to anything I get from people out there. So thank you for facilitating it and making it happen.
Yeah, man, it's easy to always get you on. Hell, you're in our highlight. So it's really easy to get you on in terms of like picking you to come back on, because you have so much stuff going on. And any of those social media links, come on, people, I always do it. I put it right in the show notes. It's sitting there. Just click them. You're going to go there, go drink some Peachy Canyon wine while you're reading one of Brent's books. Tragedy on the Mountain's a great one, and get after it, man. And I appreciate you, Brent, coming on, man. We're going to keep in touch. We'll always be keeping in touch with you, and let us know if there's anything we can do for you.
And the last piece of the way people get a hold of me through, and all my social media is contacted through it, is my website, which is hugs, HUGS, by Brent.com.
Hugsbybrent.com.
Hugs by Brent. Reach out to there, and it stands for Helping Others Give Strength. That's nice, the HUGS acronym for it. Reach out and let's get this community bigger and make it a positive impact on this world, and we'll be in touch when we have something else going on.
You're the man. Thanks again to Brent Poppen for coming on today. You can find more about any guest and all things Living Adaptive, such as previous episodes, guest contact info, show notes, and a bunch of other good stuff at www.livingadaptive.com. Talk to you soon. Peace.